The first wave of NFL free agency has hit, and now it's time for a mock draft. What clues do we know about teams' plans? Where are these prospects now as we sit in March? It's Williamson's Mock Draft 2.0 coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there. Subscribe on YouTube. Helps everybody else find the podcast and obviously helps us out as well. And you don't want to miss an episode as we go through the NFL offseason. We've got mock drafts. We've got trades happening, free agency. We're going to get into the second wave of free agents here as we approach, of course, the NFL draft. And welcome if you're new to the program. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you listen to your podcast. And you can always get your questions in for our weekly mailbags as well at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL or in the YouTube comments. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com to get started. All right, here we go. Post free agency, first wave of free agency. Some more players are going to get signed. There's going to be potentially some trades and some other things that could shake it up. But the biggest moves have happened now through the first week of free agency, Matt. And as we sit on Friday, after the new league year has begun, how do you see these things? Do you want to preface it before we start going through your picks in 2.0 version of Matt Williamson's mock draft?
Yeah, I do this for Steelers.com every so often, and we do a video for it. And we're not allowed to do trades at this point, and I don't know how many I would incorporate, but it is an interesting draft, especially at the top. I really think there's four premier prospects, but one of them's a running back and won't go super high. I just want to start, with right there. You know, I have Cam Ward going 1, I have Carter going 2, and I have Travis Hunter going 3. I feel very confident, and this stuff does change by the week, don't get me wrong, that Ward and the Titans are going to be a marriage. You know, they've built an O-line. I think they're just going to stick and pick. I think he's a better prospect than a lot of people look at. This isn't the Kenny Pickett year with quarterbacks. Ward is a legit big-time prospect to me, and I think the Titans recognize that. I see some McNair in his game with that organization, and, let's roll, and I also think early in the second round for Tennessee, then maybe they can get a Burden or a Buka or somebody like that too. I mean, get them some kind of young receiver.
And they've done the work on the offensive line. It really feels that way, that's the way this thing is. If you could do trades in this mock draft, do you think you would have a team maybe trying to go up to number 1 for Cam Ward?
See, that's what I was going to say is the next 2 picks, I just took the best prospects, Carter to the Browns, Hunter to the Giants. But they're not super huge needs for teams that need a lot. And Carter next to Myles Garrett would be really cool, don't get me wrong. And Hunter's anywhere would be really cool. But I wonder, just knowing those ownership groups to some degree, are they going to put a lot of pressure on the Browns or Giants front office to say, you got to take Sanders here, which to me would be a mistake. But I could see that's how it works sometimes. I mean, the Browns didn't want to take Johnny Manziel, and ownership told them to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Browns do some weird things, as we
do.
Know. So there could be a shakeup for sure in the top 3. But as of now, it's really hard for me. Even if you think the Titans don't go Cam Ward, it's hard for me to see any other 3 players in some order going 1, 2, 3, and then it would depend on who the second one is. Maybe a team likes Hunter over Carter, so it goes Ward, Hunter, Carter, or maybe it goes Carter, Hunter, Ward, or something like that. But those 3 players in those 3 picks, and right now, Matt, I think I would have it. Now that Myles Garrett has stayed, I could see maybe
I almost went Hunter too.
Hunter, then Carter. And one reason I would say that is just today, especially, and it might change before April, is we still don't have the complete eval on Abdul Carter. He didn't even get a weigh-in at the combine, which is
they also have Burns and Thibodeau.
how did they let him get out of there? Right?
Yeah.
How did they let him get out of there?
I think he's going to be liked, and he's got an injury,
Yeah, and so we need to see that. Is he 6'3"? Legit? Is he 6'2.5", 245? How long is his
not going to look like Myles Garrett?
I think it's a pretty big difference, and I think it's probably enough of a tiebreaker for me personally in my rankings to draft Travis Hunter over Abdul Carter if Abdul Carter shows up and he's 6'2.5", 245, and has 32-inch arms. Right.
So again, if you're looking at this through a Giants lens, Carter's fine, but I have Thibodeau and I have Burns that I've invested in heavily. And I wonder, with pressure from ownership, might they make the Titans a Godfather offer at the last minute and be like, we'll give you way too much to go from 3 to 1 and take Ward? I don't know.
Or might they trade this pick to some other team because they just need that?
That's the last guy someone might trade up for.
Pick 3 for the New York Giants is Joe Shane's maybe last chance at saving his job. So why would he care? Or especially about future picks. Maybe that would be the way to look at it. It's like, he's like, I don't care. You can have my next 2 first-round picks. I don't care because I'm not going to be able to use them if I don't get a quarterback. So the Giants are very interesting. And when a team is up against the wall and potentially
or Rodgers could still land there.
And is that even enough to do anything for them? So I don't know. The Giants are in a weird.
They're in a little bit of a bind. Yeah.
And then the draft really starts at 4. If we do believe that those are the number 1 elite quarterback that's going to go ahead of Sanders, and there's like not much conversation anymore these days that Sanders could be QB1 over Cam Ward, and then Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. Those are the blue chippers, and that's the top quarterback in the draft. So the draft really starts at pick 4, right? So who do you have for the New England Patriots there?
I have Membo going there, and I'm really growing on him. I think he's a fantastic prospect. Don't get me wrong. But it would be Alt or Latham or, you know what I mean? Like the true tackle.
I don't know about Latham. I think Alt.
Maybe not Latham. Alt
he's more in the Latham category to me, where it's like,
yeah.
It's not necessarily because on tape I liked Will Campbell more, and I don't. The thing for me is that I just think when I was evaluating these prospects, and look, Locked On 49ers daily, the Niners need potentially a long-term tackle, and I was looking at these guys, and I was doing tape on all the tackles. Membo was a good, like, clean first-round guy, but he was kind of middle of the first round. But at the same time, after those 2 blue-chip players in Carter and Hunter, man, those grades were really close. So his combine just confirming his arm length and confirming his athleticism and even showing that maybe there's even more for him. You can dare to dream on him. Can that grade go from, the 13th player on your board to the 4th player on your board, considering how hard it is? Like
in this draft,
I think it could, because those grades are so close. And when you see Will Campbell come in with shorter arms, he's not a tackle for you. If you really need a tackle, you kind of got to go Membo over Will Campbell, even if maybe you like Campbell's tape a little more. And then you look
Membo might have went 10th last year.
Right. And then you look at Josh Simmons. It's like, he's got the red flag with the injuries. And even if you love his tape, and even if maybe he was a cleaner left tackle because Membo's a right tackle, and
they signed Morgan Moses, who's only a right tackle.
Right.
And only a line investment.
And he's 37 years old too. So to me, everything points to Membo. If I was doing a mock draft today, I would also have Armand Membo go and pick 4 to the New England Patriots. So I like it.
But for a 4th overall pick, it's not great value compared to other years. And that's true for these next few picks, to be honest with you. And it was going to be an O-lineman. I mean, after the way free agency went, it's going to be an O-lineman or a receiver. And I'm just not there with any of these receivers.
The Jaguars are pretty interesting here. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like Abdul Carter, Ted McMillan, is he falling? Are all the wide receivers falling? We're going to get to some of the wide receivers in this mock draft, but he needs to eval. Will Johnson's another guy. Like, he needs to work out at some point, and he's not even going to work out on pro day now too. So some interesting players that still need to finish the job here, so we know exactly where to rank these prospects, because again, these grades are all, I think, really close in the next tier of players after the top couple of blue chip guys. Who goes 5 to the Jaguars?
Yeah, I don't love picking 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in this draft, compared to most years. Top 10 is not good. I gave him Will Campbell just because he's safe. I mean, their head coach comes over from Tampa Bay that took a tackle and made him into a center, and just get the best 5 offensive linemen on the field and run the football. I mean, that was but it could be Mason Graham. It could be a lot of different directions.
Yep. And you know, if Mimbo's there, I could see that being a pick
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Jacksonville, because he's kind of similar to Tristan Wirfs over there. And so I can buy a lot of different players, but yeah, the floor is maybe the highest with Will Campbell. And maybe he's a guard, maybe he's an all-pro center, really smart player, sound technician. And it'll be interesting for me to just see if a team tries him at tackle first or if he just goes straight inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I mean, so just get him in there and figure it out. But I don't love that with the 5th overall pick.
Las Vegas Raiders going Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, at pick 6. What are your thoughts on the Raiders?
I thought about Genty. I mean, I think that could be the first time he starts to come up, and boy, the offense would kind of be complete then. But their back 7's still pretty bad, especially the corner position. So maybe this is early for him. Maybe this is a leap of faith. I think he'll run well enough when the day comes. But again, I don't like a lot of these options.
For a Pete Carroll defense, he's such a good fit.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Seahawks traditionally kind of draft their, long corners later, but Witherspoon was a pick for them very recently, right? They went
right around this neighborhood, like 5 or 6.
It was number 5 overall, wasn't it, with the corner? So he bucked that trend. So that's an interesting one there for the Raiders if they were to go corner. Could go a lot of directions for the Raiders there, and I think that's the beginning of the Genty possibilities.
Agreed.
Next, we're going to get to pick. We're going to finish up the top 10 here. We've got pick 7, which is the New York Jets, who did find a quarterback and might be telling us that teams maybe aren't as into Shedeur Sanders. Where does Shedeur Sanders? Where does the second quarterback go? Are there 3 quarterbacks? Or are there only 1 in the first round? Are the wide receivers dropping? All that coming up next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before, because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. You got your eye on maybe that Cinderella story, a few underdogs this year in your bracket, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. And with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is super easy to use too. Simple, and when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com or download the app and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That is FanDuel.com. All right, New York Jets signed Justin Fields, 2-year contract. So they have at least a short-term option. We'll see how that goes. Justin Fields hasn't been a long-term option for anybody in the NFL. I think quarterback could potentially still be in play, but it's unlikely. And Mason Graham is the player now for the New York Jets at pick 7 out of Michigan. Again, another player, Michigan Pro Day. Like, how much do you weigh? Are you 320 pounds or are you 296 pounds? And if you're 296 pounds, you better work out extremely well if you're Mason Graham, or that stock could continue to slide. It feels like it's already on the slide because, again, got to complete that eval.
100%. And I don't feel great about it, but new defensive-minded head coach is basically what was my answer to this.
The Carolina Panthers are an interesting football team, and I just kind of see I see a different edge in every single mock draft here. Are we at the point where the Panthers are like, they're just going to draft the best pass rusher possible and try to fix that unit on their football team? You got Jalen Walker from Georgia here.
Yeah, and he seems like he's the consensus too behind Carter. But yeah, I think every mock I do will have the Panthers and Falcons taking an edge, and probably the Falcons again next year and the year after that and the year after that. But we'll get to them in a minute. The Saints pick's interesting.
Can I talk about Jalen Walker for 1 second?
Yeah, please.
I think he's at the combine, he showed that he doesn't have the length and size probably to play like defensive end. But if you're a team that employs an odd front, need a stand-up rusher, and you're the type of defensive coordinator that likes to utilize his pieces in different ways, and you could kind of move him around and use him as a chess piece, I hope there's a creative defensive coordinator that drafts Jalen Walker. because I think that'll be the best fit for him. But again, like he didn't work out at the combine. He's got a little bit of I think it's a thigh or something. He didn't do the Georgia Pro Day either. So again, we still don't have times on Jalen Walker, and he was a little bit smaller than ideal to be a top 10 edge guy. So I'm kind of squinting at him as well as a top 10 guy. A lot of all these insiders though must be getting word from teams that they love Jalen Walker because he continues to stay really high in mock drafts.
And their defensive coordinator is a creative mind. You send him any good players, so maybe. You laid it out well, though. I mean, so many of these top 10 guys still have major questions out there looming. Major.
So does the next guy, New Orleans.
Yep.
And they make a move for a quarterback here. Shedeur Sanders to the New Orleans Saints. And the more I think about this, Matt, the more I really like this pick. And if you're a team like the Bears, the 49ers, you're like, come on, we're not going to draft the quarterback. So I hope Shedeur Sanders goes in the top 10 because that could really shake things up. Or could this be a point where a team that's back a little bit further says, oh man, Shedeur's still there. Now it's striking distance, and I can maybe trade up. Could that be the player that really shakes things up where a team moves up to get a falling Shedeur Sanders?
I can see that. I'm not sure who that is. I don't think it's the Steelers, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what quarterback needy team would go to 8-9 from where they're at. I mean, unless there's a package deal like the Giants missed out on them on 3, and we're going to give you early 2 and next year's first and something else, which the Saints should absolutely listen to, but that's not really how they're built. We'll get to my draft ditties sometime probably next week. But one of the things that kind of hesitated to do this was the last time the Saints took a quarterback in the first round was Archie Manning.
Maybe that's a signal that they should.
Maybe you should trade your ways, right? Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So the first quarterback since Archie Manning in the first round for the Saints. Chicago Bears, Ashton Jeanty. I like this one the more and more, especially with the way they hit
because of free
line as hard as possible in free agency.
Exactly. And they also hit the D line pretty heavy. They want to run the football in a lines like manner, I would imagine. I'm fine with it.
A fascinating player here again, and look, he was my number 1 left tackle prospect in the draft. Josh Simmons, offensive tackle from Ohio State. You got him going 11 to the San Francisco 49ers. So the pick makes sense on that front. Mm-hmm. The big question here is the red flag. How are teams going to treat his injury? There's been some really bad results from the what is the knee injury he has? It's not an ACL injury. It was first reported as an ACL, and I think teams would wish it was an ACL because players come back from that more often than they come back from the patellar tendon tear is right. What Josh Simmons has. But Simmons is doing well in his rehab, and so well, in fact, that he says he's going to be able to work out for teams in April just before the draft. So it's going to be a really late one there. And if he's able to do that, and he's able to let teams know that he is going to be ready to play, and he is all the way back, that could change his stock tremendously because he could go as high as 11, like here to the 49ers. He go top 10, even higher. He could fall the second round. I just have no idea what this is going to do to him.
Again, so many of these prospects, I mean, you laid it out for every one of them. They have major questions, and we will get answers, but in the middle of March, we don't have any of those answers.
More and more draft insiders, Matt, have Matthew Golden climbing and potentially the number 1 wide receiver in this NFL draft after it was Ted McMillan for basically the entire prospect up until, right about a little bit after the combine. And now you got Matthew Golden here going to the Dallas Cowboys, wide receiver out of Texas.
So much different than CeeDee Lamb. Texas guy, I'm sure Jerry likes that. They could go a ton of different directions. I mean, if Jeanty gets that far, sure, they could add O-line help. They could go, defensive tackle, whatever. I just thought it was a good fit.
And we know fast guys go high, and he went to the combine.
Yeah.
Threw down a 4.29 40-yard dash with a 1.49 10-yard split. That was probably enough to make a lot of teams go, "Oh, okay, that is a first round guy then for us."
Mm-hmm. And that would be something they could really use.
Miami Dolphins, free agent. Yeah, absolutely. Miami Dolphins at pick number 13, Kelvin Banks Jr. So the run on offensive tackles is kind of over. If you wanted to tackle, you better have drafted in the top 13 in this mock.
I just think position value. I mean, I don't know if Miami looks at offensive line as a priority. I would if I were them. Armstead's up in age. They did sign James Daniels, but I would keep building that O-line.
Indianapolis Colts pick 14, Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. His stock throughout all of this has not changed, it feels like. It's like, okay, yeah, he's the guy that we like, but he's a tight end, so he's not going to go maybe top 10, but soon thereafter, Tyler Warren probably get his name called.
I just didn't see any good fits, but I think he's a top 7 or 8 type of prospect. The position value isn't great, and Colts could use other things as well, but I just can't see him falling very far.
And if teams aren't enamored with the wide receivers, and they're like, well, this is the most dynamic pass catcher in this draft, maybe we'll go Tyler Warren instead of one of the wide receivers.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Atlanta Falcons, they get an edge rusher in every draft, and let's see if they can actually find one. And the fit here is almost too perfect because Shamar Stewart is such a boomer bust guy. And so the Atlanta Falcons might find that in a few years, they still never found their guy. But man, when you look at like guys that do what Shamar Stewart did at the combine, this is like elite level athleticism stuff. And so I don't think you should be shocked how high Shamar Stewart potentially goes. Now, he just didn't get home to the quarterback enough in college. And really, when I put on the tape, is one of those where it's like, I'm putting him, I have him even later than this. But
I don't blame you.
Again, like I will probably, I personally have him later, but I will probably mock him even higher than this in my mock drafts, just because like guys who put up this level of athleticism testing at this size go not only high, but number 1 overall, like Trayvon Walker.
Yeah, right.
Jadeveon Clowney, you're right. And there's like Mario Williams level stuff. It went ahead of Reggie Bush in that draft. And everyone thought Reggie Bush was locked in as the best player in the 2005 NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
But Shamar Stewart, when you show up at 6'5", 267, he was 281 at the Senior Bowl, long arms, 34 inches, 4.59 in the 40-inch vertical, 10-11 broad jump. It's freaky stuff. And so Atlanta Falcons, I like the fit here, and you got to take the swing if you're the Falcons. Get yourself a stinking edge rusher.
And it's such an exaggeration, but if Shamar Stewart ended up with the Eagles, I'd say, oh, he's going to be Reggie I'm ends up with the Falcons, he's going to be Vic Beasley.
I'm with you. I mean, I'm exactly right there with you. All right, let's finish the first half here, which is the Arizona Cardinals going Texas corner, Jahdae Barron. Is it a matter of, okay, who's the best defensive player on the board, and we're going to take him for the Cards?
Exactly. And I just think Barron's going to go high. There's just so many things he does well. The testing was great. Everything I'm hearing, reading, that the league loves this guy.
The league apparently loves him, like the way he plays. I think that he's a fun player, but I think the league looks at him as a nickel. And if Brian Branch falls into the 40s and DeJean falls into the 40s, is Jahdae Barron a better prospect than those guys were coming out? I don't know about that. So
I'm just hoping the league looks at it differently now.
They should probably.
Same drill you could add to that mix too. Right.
Like those two players I just mentioned shouldn't have clearly been first round picks. So maybe the league's like, yeah, let's not do that anymore.
Yeah, I'm hoping. That's kind of what I'm betting on here.
Let's not let the Eagles draft him at 32. Let's take him before that, right? It's kind of what the league should probably say to themselves.
And it's not like these teams are passing on premier tackles or quarterbacks. This draft's not as good.
Finish up the second half of Matt Williamson's mock draft 2.0 next. This episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by Monarch Money. And have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, wait a second, where'd all that money go? Between dining out and online shopping and entertainment. And, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When you start using Monarch, you realize just how much you were spending on things like food delivery. And now you could budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever as well with Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year of Monarch Money. Okay, here we go. Pick 17 through 32. Let's fire through these. What do you like for the Cincinnati Bengals here? Again, another team where it's like, let's just find the best defensive player possible, right?
Yeah, and defensive tackle, Walter Nolan, might have some off-the-field stuff that usually doesn't concern the Bengals. They need more of an attack-type guy. I mean, I don't love anything on defense to me would work.
I love Walter Nolan. I think he's
too.
top 10 player in this class based on the tape and the physical ability and what he could be. The off-field stuff, is it like serious, or is it just like Texas A&M was saying bad stuff about him because they're mad that he transferred away from them, right? Like I can't figure out, because I haven't really heard anything specific about what it is with Walter Nolan. But he could be like one of those star players that falls too far if he really does have his head screwed on straight, and the motor on the field is there too. So if that's your indicator, I think he's going to be a dude. So I love this for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Seahawks need interior line. Now all of a sudden they need like everything on offense. I gave him a very safe pick in Tyler Booker.
Keep Sam Darnold, your new quarterback, clean in Seattle.
Yeah. Run the ball.
Seattle's, I think that, there's a new regime in town. They might surprise us a little bit. I can't really get a good handle on what I think the Seahawks might do here, but Tyler Booker is a dude in the middle, and again continues that run. Like, we see what these offensive linemen are getting paid. They're going to go high in the draft. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jihad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. Speaking of combine stars, I mean, he just checked everything off across the board. He can cover a little bit. He can rush the passer a little bit. He's a beast.
Yeah, and learn from Levante David. He's been linked to the Bucs a ton. It's still a huge need for them. The dude they drafted, White, didn't really work out, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't try it again,
Absolutely. We got another running back, Omarion Hampton, running back from North Carolina, going to the Denver Broncos.
After signing Ingram, I think, Loveland's probably off the board, and they got a lot of things in place in Denver. Give me a big-time back and run the football, and I think Bo Nix would be happy about it.
I can see it. I can absolutely see it. Your Pittsburgh Steelers going defensive tackle, the biggin, 330, 340 maybe pound defensive tackle in Kenneth Grant.
They need to find the next guy. Cam Hayward's still great, but Ogunjobi got cut. Benton's fine, but D-line needs to be addressed in a big way.
I love this. This just stylistically, you think Pittsburgh Steelers, you got to have someone at least 330 plus in the middle of that defensive line, right?
Yep, that can run, and I would love this pick.
Yeah. The Chargers going with Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. This was the pick I had for the Chargers in my last mock draft as well. You bring Jim Harbaugh, his old tight end. Again, a player that I'm not sure exactly where I want to put him, but he's a player that is a first round athlete, and give him to his old coach.
Yeah, all the money they had, I'm kind of shocked they didn't help Herbert more with pass catchers. So that needs to happen. Yeah,
and if wide receivers do start to fall, teams like
that Chargers
at 22 will benefit, right? So tight end, wide receiver, that's just where you're going to go in the mocks. But we'll see. Jim Harbaugh,
I almost put McMillan there.
A little bit differently sometimes, and he just might not care about receivers too much.
Maybe not.
Micah Williams, defensive end out of Georgia, going to the Green Bay Packers. This is a very Packers-y pick. Like
exactly.
A tooled up defensive lineman is what you should usually mock draft to the Packers, and you'll be right more times than not.
Yeah, it's my exact thoughts. You nailed it. Right. I like this next fit a lot just because of who the defensive coordinator is.
Maybe nobody helped themselves out more in Indianapolis than Nick Emanwari, safety from South Carolina, going to the Minnesota Vikings, 6'3", 220. Just ridiculous workout, 43-inch vertical, like special stuff there. And when you watch him play on tape, I was surprised he wasn't like some big old stiff either, that you're like, this guy's a linebacker. He's got lateral movement skills. He made some plays. So interesting player. Maybe still a little boomer bust, but
sure.
and to put him ahead of other safeties in this class. Starks, especially because Starks plays with his head. Nicky Manwari, you're drafting the traits.
And Flores just would use him in so many ways. And Harrison Smith's back to be a mentor. I thought that was a perfect fit.
Houston Texans clearly need to do something on the offensive line, and then they're having some troubles figuring out how that all works together. Going Josh Connerly, the offensive tackle from Oregon. I like that pick.
Maybe even trade up to make sure you get him at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Los Angeles Rams going Maxwell Hairston. Speaking of combine stars, flying cornerback out of the University of Kentucky. He's getting a lot of pub because I hadn't even heard of him hardly before the combine. And then you realize, oh, he's actually kind of a baller. It's not just like a combine star, but an interesting player here for the Rams, cornerback out of Kentucky.
I really get the impression he's going the first round. I mean, like you said, with Golden, guys that run fast go early, and their corners are pretty lackluster to me.
Mike Green, edge rusher from Marshall, goes to the Baltimore Ravens at pick 27. And I hate this for the rest of the league because Mike Green in Baltimore just feels like someone who's going to be a monster. And the tape is awesome for Mike Green. Apparently there's some off-field stuff, though, that might push him down to 27, even though maybe he should go higher.
I kind of hate it for the rest of the league, too. It's like they just got too good a player at 27.
I hate it for the Lions, too, because then they might like that type of player. They might like Mike Green, so they go different edge rusher. And James Pierce out of Tennessee going the speed variety there.
I have mixed feelings about him, but I think his just testing and gifts are going to get him in the first round no matter what.
I'm with you. He's a first rounder, but he's a back half first rounder. There's just some piece missing from him. But if you're okay with that, and especially when you get into the back half of the first round, to be able to get a guy who's 6'5", 245 that can run 4.47 at the combine, like
crazy.
He can get home, even if it's a little one-dimensional on the outside. Yeah.
And I just think they're to play with a lot of leads in a dome, and that fits him perfectly,
I mean, you're doing backflips if you're the Washington Commanders. You get Tedrow McMillan at pick number 29.
I don't think he's going to run well, and I think that could ding him. There's a lot of landing spots where McMillan could have fallen before this. Don't get me wrong. The Chargers, on and on. Even the Cowboys, he could be receiver 1. I don't think he could go 4th overall to New England. Maybe if he runs a 4.4 flats, but for whatever reason, I just had receivers dropping a little bit. It's
the most important 40 time left at the pro days is technically.
Yeah.
Is it 4.55? He's still a first rounder, but not high in the first round. Is it 4.47? Then I think he's a top 10 guy. His ball skills are ridiculous. Some of the best we've seen. And I don't even care if he can get open because he's always open. And he has more after the catch than I thought. There's some build-up speed there. So I think there is. He could run fast, but there's also a chance he could run slow. I don't think he's going to be slow. So my guess is 4.47 to 4.55. And I'm still fine with that.
And he probably would go earlier than that if that's the case, which certainly could happen. I'm sure his 10-yard split won't be great. But Debo and McLaurin aren't young. The Debo trade would not prohibit me from taking a receiver in round 1.
And you can't be more different than Debo with 10.
Exactly.
Yeah. Malachi Starks, absolutely love this for the Buffalo Bills. Great fit on their defense. Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia.
Just plug them and play them. Their safeties used to be great, and now they're playing with the Hamlins of the world. I think this has to be defense.
They did re-sign Hamlin, right? But that's not going to stop them from drafting Malachi Starks. And Starks could come in and play a star role. He could man up and cover guys. He could play some nickel.
They play tons of nickel.
And teams really just need those types of players on defense with how positionless offense is getting right now.
I really like that fit. I like this next fit quite a bit too.
Yeah, Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. Guard, tackle, just a good football player.
Yeah, I mean, sort of like Tooney was for the Chiefs. Like a tackle background, but he's probably better at guard. Put him in a left guard, and if the left tackle situation's a disaster, maybe he kicks out at some point. Who knows?
And Matt Williamson's mock draft 2.0 finishes off with the Philadelphia Eagles at 32, drafting Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon.
Sure feels like kind of a Milton Williams replacement, doesn't it? Just get younger with a lot of ability. It seems to be a guy on the upswing, playing his best football now. Pretty good tester. Eagles like those guys.
Easy peasy. Sit back if you're the Eagles and just draft that best defensive lineman that falls to you there and replace Sweat, replace Milton Williams, and Derek Harmon is probably the closest Milton Williams comp that there is in this draft. So perfect. Love
it. It's crazy, though. There was 5 to 10 guys that if you asked me, if they go in the first round, I would have been like, yeah, but then you start putting where they go. They're not much different than the 15th pick in these drafts, but Igbuka and Burden and Zabel, and there were a lot of guys I left off that were not easy to leave off.
It's hard for me with the wide receivers because the way the league treats wide receivers and pays wide receivers, for them to fall like it seems like they are.
Plan on that.
When Daniel Jeremiah and Todd McShay and Matt Williamson and Mel Kiper, they're all I think all of them dropped the mock draft recently that had Luther Burden outside of the first round. And he is he's a first round talent all day for me. And so I'm thinking put on my 49ers hat. there's zero chance that Kyle Shanahan doesn't absolutely love Luther Burden. So if he starts to fall to this point, Niners are going to trade up from 43 to go get him, right? Because
I'm sitting there thinking, if I'm the Titans and I just took Cam Ward and I'm sitting there the first pick in the day 2, yeah, I'll take that all day long. Or even Ibuka.
Go up and get Ted McMillan too. Like have that big rangy, can catch everything guy for your young quarterback that, likes to throw the ball up. That would be
real appealing.
Interesting. Yeah. So we'll see. The wide receivers, will they truly fall? It does seem like, if you're reading the tea leaves, that they will be falling, and that Matthew Golden is like the only one climbing right now in the NFL draft.
I didn't do it on purpose. It's just kind of the way it fell. Yeah. But and I didn't realize those other guys that know more than I do had the same thing.
Looking at free agency too, when in doubt, draft the best lineman, right?
Yeah, I do think that trend will.
There's just going to be a massive amount of offensive and defensive linemen drafted,
especially after this last Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah. That's Matt Williamson's Mock Draft 2.0. What do you think? Let us know at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a comment on YouTube. Subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back Monday right here. Peacock and Williamson.